Globe showing Europe, Africa when the world is ending, survival becomes the only rule. Greenland 2. Migration is a depressing disaster film that omits a little but important component of the genre. After a comet destroys the whole Earth, Gerard Butler and Morena Baccarin reprise their roles as John and Allison Garrity, attempting to live. It's all performed with great drama, just like The Last Greenland. As a result, the picture performs admirably as a drama about the ruins of society, but falters when it switches back to a disaster thriller. This is due to the fact that without humor, the grim tone lashes out against the plot's overpowering gloom. To truly succeed, the movie required a little more humor and passion, which lifts previous disaster films. Greenland 2. Migration, a somber tale with a bittersweet resolution. Greenland 2. Migration lacks a feeling of self-awareness or dark comedy that is usually present in disaster movies, even though the genre is generally characterized by heavier story beats and sad character turns. Migration mostly stays focused on threats that the Garrity family faces. Even the quieter time spent with both old and new acquaintances contain an implicit assumption of an ignominious end, so there is no time for introspection. However, the audience is left with characters who feel unbeatable and simple due to the comparatively small number of significant characters and lack of humor, which lowers the stakes. Although the Garrity family is portrayed by talented performers who successfully embody the archetypes, the characters themselves lack a clear personality throughout the majority of the movie, relying instead on single characteristics like desperate, good-natured, and sad to break up that usual character space. There are a few character moments. This is disheartening because the movie does include some lighter character moments in the opening sequences before an earthquake sends the Garrity family rushing across Europe. These small gestures, such as John reluctantly dancing with his wife or playfully taunting his son, greatly contribute to the character's humanization. The stakes feel so much higher when the trio later had to flee an earthquake and titles surge since the audience is now more interested in them. But as the movie progresses, the constant tragedy and difficulties take precedence over the traits that make each character unique. Greenland 2. Migration is obviously more concerned with the consequences for humanity and the survivors' desperate attempt to live another day than it is with spectacle for its own reason. The tone is grim, and the world building supports that. The picture is less organically captivating and interesting than it could have been, though, because of its unrelenting gloom. The reasons why great disaster films must be fun. But it wasn't always like this in earlier disaster film generations. In addition to finding moments of dark humor or unexpected empathy, films like Poseidon, The Towering Inferno, and The Day After Tomorrow exploited their situations to provide a lot of terror and human drama. Those movies featured comedic relief characters, or took grim pleasure in eliminating villains. Finding the positive aspects of dreadful circumstances is a natural reaction to the world's atrocities and is essential for a story's emotional rhythm. Jokes can be used to remind viewers of a character's humanity, ease tension following a high-stakes scenario, or even give characters a little more personality. Although Greenland 2. Migration is not the first catastrophe film to largely avoid comedy in any manner. It stands out for how unfunny the whole thing is. Though apocalyptic, the situation is unrelentingly depressing. The film alternates between overpowering despair and bittersweet optimism. It's worthwhile to examine things like Twister or Deep Impact as comparison. By making the characters likable and sympathetic, the former aims to strengthen the audience's bond to the characters, while they struggle to avoid being swept away and slain. The tone of Deep Impact should be more akin to that of Migration, with a somber sense of inevitable fate and a strong sense of hope amidst the atrocities of an extinction-level event. However, that film also kept focus on the character dynamics in a way that Migration steadily stops to as the film goes on. The movie is entertaining. The viewers became more sympathetic to the protagonist's predicament as they fought for their lives as a result. In this regard, even the original Greenland performed better. Even though the movie wasn't particularly humorous, it was easier to relate to because of its more realistic focus on humans and their relationships in a dire circumstance. The genre depends on disaster films that can make the audience care about the individuals who are lost in the chaos by incorporating humor and character into the story. Migration is at its strongest when it confronts the more obvious cost and misery of civilization collapsing, reverting to the tone of the previous film. Though Migration is by no means the first disaster film to be overly serious for its own good, it's disappointing that Greenland 2, Migration loses out on opportunities to increase audience engagement. However, the scale of events and the diminished attention to the people make the transition into a disaster film feel like a hollow spectacle. Collision Greenland reminds us that the real fight isn't against a comet,